So, is there life after philosophy? I'm interviewing philosophy majors years after graduation. Let's hear what they have to say. I'm Christopher Anadale. Welcome to Life After Philosophy. My guest today is Erika Ahern, a seasoned journalist and managing editor for Refine, CatholicVote's lifestyle newsletter, and co-host of the LOOPcast. Her writing has appeared in USA Today, The Washington Examiner, and other publications. She is a contributing author and editor for CatholicVote's 2024 book, For God, Country, and Sanity, How Catholics Can Save America. She appears regularly as a guest on podcasts and talk radio. Erika holds degrees in philosophy from the Catholic University of America and Emory University. She and her husband live outside of New Haven, Connecticut, with their 7 children. Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Now, this is you are as I almost put this in the bio at the intro. You're kind of a rising star in the podcasting world. Certainly, I would think in the Catholic podcasting world. You're hosting a news show. Is that right? For CatholicVote?
Yeah. So LOOPcast came about. Most people know CatholicVote through the Loop, which is our morning email rundown of the news. We have a fantastic news writing team there. And I started out at CatholicVote doing copywriting, helping out with emails, and also writing for the Loop. And we have the best staff meetings and editorial meetings. And as we're having these, discussing the news, what to feature, what's the angle, people started saying, we should just record these. And we had the talent to do it. Tom Pegasic was sort of the driving force behind getting this off the road. Off the road, is that even a thing? My metaphors are terrible. But Josh Mercer.
Off the ground. Yeah.
Off the ground. Thank you. Josh Mercer, who's the founder of The Loop and one of the co-founders of CatholicVote and senior editor at the time. And I was helping out with sort of associate editor duties, and we just love talking together. And, you get a lot of feedback from Catholics and just people of goodwill around the country feeling like, I'm really interested in politics. I'm interested in religion, but that's what my grandma told me not to talk about ever. And so I'm just not sure how to have these conversations. And we're like, well, we love talking about these things. It's really the only thing there is to talk about. So we'll just start recording these, and it turned into a big hit. People love it. We get really good feedback. Some people hate it, of course, but that means you're probably doing the right thing somehow. But yeah.
Well, it's a lot of content. I listen to it sometimes when I'm mowing the lawn, but if it's an hour to 2 hours, 3 times a week, that's a lot of conversation, a lot of great way of keeping up on current events. But it's not exhausting for you guys because you're really just sort of recording something that you were doing already.
Yeah, very much so. And of course, we started off with just an hour a week. It was pre-recorded, very safe. We could make a mistake and say something. Eventually we went live, which was really scary for me at first, but you just sort of get into the swing of things and realize that, people aren't looking for perfection. You're going to say things that are stupid and you wish you hadn't said, but as long as you're authentic and honest and, doing your best to gather real evidence from the world to back up your opinions, and you're willing to change based on a change in evidence or new data, that's really all that it takes. And Tom Pegasic, our producer and one of our co-hosts, he always reminds me when I get a little down about it. He's like, Erika, you're the man in the arena. Like, somebody's out there doing it and talking about it. And if you make mistakes, Lord have mercy on our souls, right? So a lot of that.
Now, are you doing also something new called The Deep, or the going in depth on issues? Because I've seen a few of those so far.
Yeah, that just started this summer. That was really exciting. A sponsor, one of our colleagues approached a sponsor who said, we'd be interested in helping out with a feature that was basically just a monologue once a week with Erika, and just getting her thoughts going deeply into one question. And that's been a real fun opportunity for me. And it's not just me. We have a great team. So we have creative brainstorming sessions. We call it creative terrorism because some of the things we throw at the wall are really not fit for consumption, and those don't make it. And we workshop other things. I write, I research, and then I have editors just tear it apart. And of course, our video editor, Simon Michael, he's a phenomenal help as well. So it's been fun to do that product. and have that time to do more deep thinking about some of these issues, which is what I love to do based on my training in philosophy. So
That's one of the things I wanted to ask you about because, you're a journalist, you're doing this podcasting, you're doing more and more. You're also the mom of 7 kids. You have a
yeah,
master's degree in philosophy. Our time at Emory, we were saying before I started the
yeah.
recording, overlap by maybe a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
But did you ever experience a sort of competition in your identity between philosophical work and, well, first mom work and now the kind of work that you're doing now? Or did it just sort of meld together?
Yeah, I think that the most conflict I experienced just in terms of my personal identity and predilections happened during graduate school, actually, at Emory. I came out of Catholic University of America, School of Philosophy, just an incredible experience where philosophy and life grew up together, and the professors, many of them were priests or religious, and for them, or the great Dr. Michael Gorman, I had the great Sokolowski, Dr. Monsignor Whipple, I mean, just amazing figures who not only were great intellects but also did philosophy in order to learn how to live. So I came out of undergrad being like, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to be in the ivory tower. I want to be making these contributions, and, all those bad ideas of the Enlightenment, I want to undo them and help build something new for the modern world. I get to Emory, and most of my classmates, maybe one exception, Gloria Wasserman, who's now a wonderful professor, she would be like the only exception. But most of my classmates, philosophy was much more of a head game, an intellectual puzzle, logic. A lot of analytic philosophers were coming into the department at the time, as you know. It
Yeah.
was sort of, Emory had been known as this great resource as the history of philosophy. Dr. Livingston, Dr. Ann Hartle was there at the time.
Hmm.
Others, there, Dr. David Carr, to a lesser extent, but that they were being pushed out. In fact, it was during my time there that there was a lot of departmental overturn and a move toward analytic philosophy.
Yeah. I
And
remember that. The history of
yeah,
philosophy was the sort of what attracted me to the
it
department
would
back in
brought
the
me
late
to the program.
90s. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it brought me there as well, this sort of promise. But being there and realizing that um, there wasn't that community, that there wasn't that belief that philosophy would inform your life. I remember taking a virtue ethics course, and at one point, everyone was arguing about how, well, you didn't want to be virtuous because that would be somehow an extreme. And I'm like, well, the whole point of virtue is that it's the mean between the extremes, and like
Oh,
it's the
no.
healthiest life. So anyway, it had lost, to me, philosophy in the academy at that point sort of lost the tether with real life. At the same time, I was having babies. I had 2 babies. I actually walked across the stage, received my master's degree, holding my 2-week-old Isabella, who was my second child.
Wow. Oh, my.
And it's funny, she actually got the degree because the dean of the school was so excited that there was a newborn on the stage strapped to her mother that she called out my daughter's name instead of mine when she conferred the degree. So she said, and with a master's in philosophy, or words to that effect, Isabella Ahern. So I kind of walked across. And so
Oh,
I've
my
told
gosh.
Isabella her whole life she has a master's degree in philosophy from Emory. But yeah, I think that was when I had the hardest struggle
Hmm.
between what's the connection between philosophy and a professional life, or philosophy and motherhood. I actually started a blog called The Philosopher Mom, which, was sort of a middle-sized blog in the 2000s. And I would sort of wrestle with these questions publicly online. And what it came down to me, for me anyway, was my studies in philosophy had been this tremendous gift of my youth in a way. And I got to really dig into, especially political philosophy, what happened, what brought us to the place where we are in the world now, and in the church as well, philosophy of religion, and sort of that history, the historical arc of the human mind, and my place in that. Um, and I think it gave me that struggle as becoming a young mom and realizing I don't have the time or any more the inclination to pursue the ivory tower. Um, Nevertheless, philosophy should change how I live my life, and it has very much. And it was a tremendous gift to be able to do that deep thinking, study the languages, read the original works, and dig that deeply before now I want to bring that to the world, right? And I think that's where journalism's been a wonderful outlet. I spent 8 years actually in classical education before that, helping start schools all over the country with a program called Regina Caeli Academy. Some of your listeners might have heard of them. So in those two industries, I've found an application for philosophy that I hope that the Lord will use in his wisdom to bring more souls to a flourishing human life, a happy life.
Yeah, that's wonderful. You brought up, philosophy as a kind of thing of your youth. And, you and I are both, getting into, middle stages, even for
Middle
me,
age. Yeah, we're
later
here,
stages
Chris.
later stages of parenting, and thinking
Yeah.
more and more about, one's life as a whole, which is what virtue
Mhm.
ethics invites you to do.
Mhm.
And thinking, I wouldn't expect, to flourish in the same way in my 50s as I would in my 20s, right? Especially if
Mhm.
I have children, and then the raising of the children and the children growing up to be, they're teenagers and then in their 20s. And I've got, a new grandchild just this past year. So
Congratulations.
yeah,
How
very, very
exciting.
exciting for me, although also feeling myself aging and turning gray. But there's something to this idea of, philosophy for each season of life. And then
Mhm.
also, being a philosophy educator in a certain way at each season of life, including, raising your children. Is
Right.
that something that you saw sort of inform the life that you've lived the past couple of decades?
Oh, very, very much so. I think that a couple of ways that studying philosophy formally, and I want to make a distinction there. I see the formal study, the academic ivory tower study of philosophy as a thing of my youth very much. Like I don't read vast treatises by Kant and all the commentary on them anymore. I don't do that.
Sure.
But I very much feel that I do philosophy every single day, and I always have. Um, and I think having children, especially when they were very young, and I still have young children. Our oldest is 20 years old. Our youngest is 16 months. So I still am very much in all the seasons of having children in the home,
God
sort
bless
of
you.
teenagers. So I can see it in each of those stages. In the younger years, having children, and especially babies, while I was studying philosophy, really convicted me that Aristotle's got it so right. Wonder is our natural state. It ought to be. Wonder isn't something that we lose when we're 5, 6, 7, or it oughtn't to be. And if we have an
Hmm.
educational system where you lose your wonder at 6, 7 years old because you're stuck in a desk all day, then we're doing something wrong. But rather, it should be a deepening of wonder. And then as you get older, even a return to a very childlike simplicity and wonder. And so it just, the children, the babies made that real for me while I was struggling with this discernment. Do I continue in the PhD or do I, move into this opportunity with the education field? Um, and so in those younger years, I would say very much that. But then as they get older, I mean, children ask very philosophical questions all the time. And so I feel that like my 8 year old asking me, why is the bird dead? Why did the birds die if they didn't sin? Or my fourth grader being like, Mom, but what about the dinosaurs? Like, my
Hmm.
friend said there's no dinosaurs. They were just sent here to test us, those bones. And my other friend said, I know Dad believes like evolution and all the way and all that. And so all these questions, like as a parent, if I was sitting around the seminar table and a 32-year-old PhD candidate asked me this question, like, what is the Catholic stance on evolution then? And how does that map onto, rigorous Thomism or something? I would give a very long and drawn out technical answer and like cite all these words. But when a fourth grader is asking you that question, you have to
Hmm.
translate the truth without altering the truth of the answer. And you have to weigh the evidence that they can grasp and put it together in a puzzle. And it's really good training for journalism, actually, because you take these big, complicated issues and you boil them down into something digestible.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so I find that philosophy, the training, it forces you to go back to first principles, to find find if there's a simpler explanation that you've missed, to constantly wonder at seemingly obvious questions like, why is there blue? What is,
Hmm.
that small children ask with new eyes all the time. So yeah, I think philosophy, yeah, it's never life after philosophy. Not to like
Hmm.
diss on your podcast title, but there is
All
no
right.
life after philosophy. It's all philosophy.
Yeah, Tom Crow, one of my first interviewees, said just that. It's
Really? Oh,
yeah,
sweet.
yeah. So way back 2 years ago. So it's fantastic. Thanks.
Good
It's
company.
yeah. That's great. Well, after can be said in many ways.
That's
So,
right. What
there's
is
this sort of
after?
ambiguity after virtue as well. So, I
Yes.
was thinking of, in light of something you said, I've remarked to seminarians. It's been my privilege to be able to teach Catholic
Yeah.
seminarians during my career, that in some ways I would say your job is harder than mine because you've got to communicate philosophical truths to people, taking account of, very different circumstances and their ability to
Hmm.
hear what they can learn and how they can progress towards, the truth and towards a coherent,
Hmm.
mature intellectual identity. And in some ways, you're going to have to do it without their knowing it. Right. So I have the
Yes.
privilege of being able to teach philosophy, and everybody knows it. It's all above board. Everybody knows I'm
This is
teaching
what we're
philosophy.
doing. Yeah.
Right. And I'll assess you, and then you'll finish. I'll give you a grade, and you'll go on. But you've got a lifetime, of preaching, but also of trying to help people understand the nature of the truth and the nature of the human person and the criteria for certainty, et cetera, and without the sort of the framework of the academic classroom and people paying attention
Hmm.
to you because they want to in that way. And it seems to me, from my perspective as a dad and husband of a homeschooling mom and
Hmm.
yours as well,
Yes.
this is part of what you do in trying to educate children as well. Does that fit with your
Oh my,
experience?
yeah. This is so true. And it's not that it's all a rhetorical game. It's not. But the art of rhetoric is so key to philosophy. Of course, the art of persuasion, right? And you can abuse, we have terrible examples of the art of rhetoric, right? I think of like, I don't know, Barack Obama being just a terrible example of using rhetoric. And you can think of like the sophists and all that back in the day. But rhetoric is a gift from God to, if you are in possession of a truth or an insight, or even a series of questions that someone else hasn't thought to ask of themselves and of their world, if you're in possession of that, part of us being creatures made for communion is to draw them into that and to, like you said, to listen to them and to understand what are their capabilities, what are their tastes, even their affections, and how can I not manipulate those, but answer those in a way that then draws them to closer to a question or to a truth, to an answer that they're seeking. And I think philosophy, I was blessed with wonderful teachers as an undergrad in terms of coaching writing in that way, and not just, writing for publication, but writing for clarity of expression and clarity of thought. So, first, you have to be clear in your own mind of what it is you're trying to communicate. Then you need to be also clear on where the other person's coming from. So listening. And I think that philosophical training does give you that. It can augment that. Obviously, you need other sources. I think people talk a lot about emotional intelligence and reading the room. I haven't seen that kind of training in a lot of philosophy seminars, but so that might come from somewhere else. But in terms of clarity of thought, I think that clarity of thought and fidelity to truth are what keep your rhetoric and your persuasive powers from becoming just empty manipulation. Um,
Right.
and that's what philosophy can give you. It's something true to talk about and to persuade people towards. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that's great. That's a fantastic answer. I was thinking I sometimes describe rhetoric as truth wearing its Sunday best.
Yes, and
So
as it
it,
should,
it
as it should.
should be appealing and should have a dignity and honor to it and attract applause, as
Yeah,
well as assent, right?
yeah, and I think that humor is a big part of that as well. And what struck me when I hit Emory, which was a much more secular program, is how humorless a lot of the and again, not to like paint too broad a picture or be a stereotypes or anything, but the lack of humor when it came to like my analytics seminars, and it just was a huge contrast to me for the people I'd studied under at Catholic U, where there was a lot of laughter and self-deprecation and noticing like, oh, there we went off the rails again, and all that. So I always look for that because I find that humor is attendant upon clarity of thought and fidelity to truth. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That breaks my heart a little bit, knowing just how much of a difference the 5 or 7 year gap between our times there made. Of course,
Yeah.
departments change in character. Every institution grows and changes over time. It's what it means to be, to be
Hmm.
alive, to be in history. But rather a shame that you couldn't have had more of the experience that I had
Yeah,
back
yeah,
back
things
back
change.
there a bit earlier. But I wanted to ask you at least one more question before I let you go, and that was about the role of philosophy in the life of the church today. Whether you
Hmm.
have any insights from your experience or sort of our hopes for the future. Of course, new pope, a lot of things,
Yeah.
new beginnings, a lot of expectations and anticipation, and you're sort of waiting to hear.
Hmm.
We just had word today that John Henry Newman would be raised to be
Yes.
Doctor of the Church, which is amazing.
I am so excited. That's just
I just
wonderful.
taught a course on Newman back in the spring,
Oh,
reading
how
a number of the
exciting.
sets. So it's very, very exciting for me as well. But
Hmm.
is there a particular role for philosophy and for philosophically trained laymen like you and I in the intellectual future of the church, maybe in its moral reform? Well, do you have any thoughts to share on that?
Absolutely. I think that we are very much living in the hour of the most educated laity in the history of the church. Just in terms, not only, I mean, people ask that question and then they start thinking about sort of like pop sensations like Matt Fradd or Trent Horn, who do amazing work.
Hmm.
But I think also in terms of like serious intellectual uh, work that's going on. I look at some of the professors in at Notre Dame, people like yourself. I think it's exciting that schools on the Newman Guide, so that would be like the guide for faithful Catholic colleges. There's some real serious scholars at those schools now, right? Like people
Right.
used to make fun of. Benedictine, perhaps like they're just trying too hard, or University of Mario, that's in the Dakotas. But I think real good work is being done there in those newer venues as well. Um, I think that in terms of the laity's role at this point in history, like I said, it's a highly educated laity. I'm most excited to see what comes out of the global south in the church as well. I feel like with new communications, we could, start to see great thinkers coming out of Africa or Southeast Asia,
Hmm.
um, and contributing to the life of the church in those ways. Pope Leo, obviously an Augustinian. So
Hmm.
we had, the great John Paul II, very Thomist phenomenology, very 20th century. And then we had Pope Benedict XVI, also tending toward the Augustinian, bringing Thomas and
Hmm.
Augustine together. And now Pope Leo promising to apply those things to the questions of our time, like AI and the digital mission field, I think he called it at his speech this week. And yeah, to see the someone who is trained in Augustinian thought taking on those practical questions of current life. Um, and I think the laity have a great role in supporting that.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens.
You've echoed something that I've thought for a while, which is that one of the dynamics within the church in
Mm-hmm.
responding to abuse scandals included is
Yeah.
is that I'm not sure the leadership of the church is fully adjusted to the level of intellectual sophistication that you have among much of the laity, especially in America,
Right.
expecting a certain kind of transparency, a certain kind of accountability. And I'm not trying to say anything controversial or bait you into
Mm-hmm.
saying anything controversial, but I feel like almost it's like
It's
the,
my
the
job.
the lady's expecting more than perhaps the leadership is ready to deliver in
Right. I
terms
think
of just honesty and straightforwardness about the truth.
Right. I think that the great movements that you're seeing now to bring that level of education are mostly coming from the laity. So you think of the rise of the Augustine Institute here,
Hmm.
but also, I mean, you think of Bishop Robert Barron. I think with Word on Fire,
Yeah.
there are those at the very height of academia might scoff in the way that C.S. Lewis's colleagues scoffed at him a little bit for trying to
Hmm.
bring his work to the masses. But I think that the good Bishop Barron understood many decades ago that there is this desire among the laity for rigorous thought about their faith and rigorous explanations. And he was right. I mean, look at the growth of these movements in the church.
Hmm. Absolutely. Let me wrap up by asking you the question of the show, which is what kind
Ooh.
of advice would you give to somebody who's maybe a sophomore in college where you were at CUA and is wondering about whether, taking the plunge on minoring in philosophy, majoring in philosophy, taking a few more philosophy courses. What kind of advice could you give from your perspective now,
Yeah.
some farther down the road?
Yeah. So I would say this. I would say that do it. The purpose of studying philosophy and it matches on exactly to the purpose of a university and of a college experience. The purpose of these things is not to qualify you for a job. It's not to, get you these skills that you can get for free online at this point in human history. But the purpose of what you're doing and why you're spending these years and this money is to discover what it means to be human, to grapple with the largest questions, and to discern the purpose of your life. And if you are at a school and there are good philosophy courses and professors who will help you grapple with these questions in an engaging way, do it. You won't regret it. You'll never get the opportunity like in the same way again. There will be opportunities to grow philosophically, but it won't be the same. So I would say do it. And life is full of surprises. If you had asked me 25 years ago if I would be doing what I'm doing right now, I would have just mind blown. I would not have known how to respond to that. So yeah, I would say dig into philosophy.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Erika. My guest today on Life After Philosophy has been Erika Ahern of CatholicVote's LOOPcast. She's also a mom of 7. Thanks again, Erika.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thank you for listening to Life After Philosophy. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate it 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. I appreciate your support.